The Arlington National Cemetery, a place dedicated to countless American lives, both famous and more relatively unknown people who have served this country, and just many monuments dedicated to these lives, these American lives. Before the Arlington National Cemetery was a cemetery, it was a property that first belonged to the grandson of George Washington Curtis. While touring the grounds of the Arlington House, we interviewed a park ranger who explained the history and significance of the land before it became a cemetery.
Here at Arlington House, this house was built between 1802 and 1818, a little more than 200 years ago, by indentured and enslaved laborers on the orders of George Custis. George Custis was George Washington's step-grandson, Martha Washington's grandson from her first marriage, adopted by George. From the prominent location of Arlington House, from the huge columns, from the fake marble finish you see on the walls are really just brick covered in stucco and painted. You can kind of tell George Custis really wanted this house to impress people. He really wanted to be seen as an important person. He traded on his connection to Washington quite a lot. He wanted this house to be where he was the keeper of Washington's legacy. He filled the house with artifacts he had collected or inherited from the Revolutionary War. So George Custis lived here for about 60 years until his death. His daughter, Mary Anna Custis, married Robert E. Lee, who was at the time a colonel in the American Army, in 1831. The Lees lived here on paper for 30 years until the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861. In practice, less than that, because they were in the Army and they moved around so much. They were stationed in different places, but this was their permanent address. George Custis died in 1857. And then Robert E. Lee, he took the leave from the Army to come back and be the executor of the estate. He never legally owned this estate, however. It was legally the property of his wife, but he was the executor of the estate. The whole Custis estate covered the cemetery, plus the Pentagon, plus Fort Myer, and a little bit into Roslyn. And on that land, about 60 people were enslaved at any given time. About 200 people were enslaved over the whole 60 years. This was the Custis Lee estate. Most of their homes have not survived. Many of the homes that were down in the fields were basically just huts. And they were down by the river. We don't really have archaeological evidence of where they were. We do have written records. Obviously, most of the land has become a cemetery now.
During the Civil War, the property was used as a cemetery for veterans of the combat and was officially established as one of the primary national cemeteries of the United States in 1864. Initially, burial at the cemetery was not considered an honor, but as more veterans were buried there and Memorial Day was established in 1868, it became more and more revered and exclusive. As the cemetery grew in notoriety, monuments commemorating big moments were erected on the property, which cemented it as one of the most honored places in the country. The Arlington Cemetery, through its vastness, design, and the many memorials it encompasses, urges the American public to acknowledge the contributions and sacrifices of Americans, both known and unknown, throughout the U.S.'s history. So as you can see from the map here, the cemetery is huge. It's a massive area. It started as the original property had 200 acres, and as it was converted to a cemetery, it tripled to over 600 acres. And they're even planning to expand more down here by the U.S. Air Force Memorial. And the cemetery is split up into 76 different sections, and there are around 30 burials a day. It is still an active cemetery for veterans and other people. And you can see there's so many different places on the map of just like famous or memorials for stuff like the Pan Am flight, the Discovery, and just famous people like JFK, Taft, all of those. A huge part of Arlington National Cemetery is the geography and how open, expansive, and but really hilly it is. And because it's such a wide place that it's home to many monuments, to really great people, many graves to very brave men and women. And you see all across the cemetery are trees, and they sort of symbolize the eternal life of these people, and with the trees obviously living a very long time. It's really all across the park, as you can see over there. And the cemetery is also home to an arboretum that showcases and maintains these trees to really keep these living forever.
So atop this hill, we can see that a lot of the tombstones are obelisks, which are reflective of the Washington Monument, which can be seen from a lot of vantage points in the cemetery. And this is very beautiful because the dead have scenery that they can reflect on eternally, and they can always see every day the capital of the nation that they fought so hard to protect and serve. Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God. This is the inscription on the sarcophagus of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, considered the cemetery's most iconic memorial, which is dedicated to the dead whose bodies could not be found or recovered. The memorial is an acknowledgement of the unfortunate consequence of wars, which is the large number of unidentified bodies that are found. This memorial honors the fallen combatants. Soldiers known as sentinels watch over the tomb of the unknown soldier 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, regardless of the weather. The position is highly ranked and takes a significant amount of training, evidenced by the decorated uniforms of the soldiers and their severe demeanor. The changing of the guard is very intense and serious occasions that visitors are welcome to see hourly. With the soldiers being so precise and ceremonial with their movements, it can be seen that the ceremony is held in very high regard and is important to the military, paying their respects to U.S. soldiers who have died in combat. The elements of the routine are done in increments of 21, which is the number of the highest symbolic military honor that can be bestowed, the 21-gun salute. 21 gunshots fired from cannons can occasionally be heard around the cemetery when a military burial is taking place.
Scattered across the grounds are monuments to different tragedies of the past, such as the Space Shuttle Challenger, which famously exploded, killing all 7 of the crew. The monument helps commemorate and honor the lives lost in pursuit of science and the advancement of the country.
One of the first memorials upon entering the cemetery is John F. Kennedy's Eternal Flame. In his inaugural address, President Kennedy stated, "The energy, the faith, the devotion we bring to this endeavor will light our country. The glow from that fire will truly light the world." JFK's contribution to society as president is eternalized through the constant light of the flame. Even though President Kennedy is no longer alive, the monument keeps him alive in spirit, which is what the cemetery as a whole seeks to do. So here we are at the memorial site of President William Howard Taft, and there's a lot of presidents buried at the Arlington Cemetery. There's also a lot of people around them who, a lot of them might not be known by many people, but they're very much honored by the fact that they're grouped into these sections along with a lot of very famous presidents and military officials. And so really just, there's a lot of history from the United States. All of these people made major contributions to U.S. history, and that is immortalized and preserved throughout Arlington Cemetery. Contemplative, peaceful, the Arlington Cemetery is a perfect place for an American citizen to honor those who have fought to serve the country. Its serenity is the perfect resting place for many Americans, many of whom met their ends during loud, bloody battles. That's it.